Hello, this is Rich Bialek, and welcome to the BialekGroup Report. Today, I'm speaking with Agnes Kisuule, who is managing partner of First Circle Capital. Welcome, Agnes. Very happy to have you here today. Excited to learn more about yourself and First Circle Capital, your investment strategy, your portfolio. Well, why don't we start a bit with you, Agnes? Tell us about how you made this journey to First Circle Capital.
Thank you so much, Rich, for having me on your podcast. My journey is that of an entrepreneur. I started my career as an entrepreneur. I had a side job during law school where I was managing a fashion production for someone, and then ended up building a garmenting factory myself in Jordan. And after that one was up and running, I set up another one in the Ukraine. And then I decided to transition into tech, first working for a data science startup in Berlin, and then ultimately going to Uganda to set up a digital business myself. That was in 2019. And as I got to travel and live on the continent, I saw a massive opportunity for technology because you live the inefficiencies every day, and there's no point in adopting legacy systems. And well, what we did with our digital businesses, we set up video libraries where people could access like digital content without having to use internet, because internet is in many countries very expensive. Started out really well, but then unfortunately COVID hit, and in Uganda we had very strict lockdowns. So what happened was that we couldn't operate these hotspots anymore. And after some months, and it became like, okay, we cannot really continue this. So I was looking at what to do next, and I saw myself well positioned in mobilizing capital from Europe, US, Japan, and so forth, and then investing it in local entrepreneurs building digital businesses. And what I was particularly keen on was fintech, because at the end of the day, on the continent, like right now, we're looking at like a few banks that are, in my opinion, somehow more functioning like asset management firms than actual service providers to the mid-market segment. So what they do is essentially they take deposits and buy T-bills, because that's very lucrative. You make 12 to 18% with very manageable risks from government. But what that does, it leaves a massive amount of people with very scarce financial services and almost no access to credit. So what we've like witnessed already in Southeast Asia and also LATAM is like fintech completely took over. And now, I mean, 30% of, I think, the LATAM region is like fintech within the financial services. So, and only like 10, 11 or something like that in the US or Europe. So I think that is the pathway for Africa as well. And we're only just getting started. So I found a very good partner in Selma. Selma is a total fintech veteran. She's been in the industry for 12 years. She initially worked with M-Pesa, where she was part of expanding mobile money into different markets. Then she built a remittance startup, sold that one, and started investing herself 7 years ago. Her early stage fintech portfolio is at like 33x MOIC, with like a third of that realized. So, I mean, she has unicorns in her portfolio like Conto. She's an investor in Tabeo, and recently she had an exit also with Expensia, a Tunisian CFO automation tool. And me and Selma, like, we got along really well because we aligned on the vision. We saw the potential that there's like early stage fintech, that's the next pipeline, right? We had seen like quite a bit of money coming in on the continent into fintech. I mean, the majority of venture funding went into fintech, but most of it went into payments. So what happened is like we have like a very interesting starting point with payments happening, but also like now we need to look at what are the applications that can be built on top of that.
Okay.
So if I continue on that, we have identified, like, we are a thesis-driven fund. We think that, like, because we want to really capture that opportunity, we map out each of the subsegments of fintech, and then we look for opportunities as we look for whatever ideas are coming our way within the fintech sphere. But we try to understand the market really, really deeply. Like, we want to know, like, what is the software, what is the tech, and anything that banks are using, what are the telecoms using, and so on. I mean, maybe a quick note on that, because like Selma has been with M-Pesa in Kenya, and now she's also on the board of MTN Momo in Ghana. Like, a lot of the fintech growth on the continent is like telecom led. Telecoms are basically the key payments providers in a lot of sub-Saharan African countries. It's different in North and also in South Africa, but in sub-Saharan Africa, it's completely telecom led.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And it's how will those worlds come together? Just a quick. My background brought me to Africa via payments, first Visa, and then with Global Technology Partners, which was a prepaid payment processor. And we were acquired by MFS Africa, now on Afrique, about 2 years ago. And what that brought together was GTP was more of traditional Visa, MasterCard, bank-centric payments. And then you have on Afrique, which is the mobile payment networks. And can those two come together, or how do they work together? But and we actually saw, you mentioned the COVID. COVID really was a bit of a jumpstart for a lot of digital payments. That early stages of COVID, it was a bit of a bump, and then I think it really accelerated some of the evolution we were seeing or hoping for in digital payments in Africa.
Absolutely. I think COVID was a real good push. I mean, with that whole hype market, obviously also in Africa as investors, we got to see the downsides of overinflation. And we still have to look realistically at the market, right? We're looking at the lowest GDPs on earth. And so we need to still be very price conscious in the way we invest. So, I mean, despite giving that kickstart on adoption, it also brought the downsides of overvaluation. But I think now we're balancing out again. So it's a good time. It's a good time to be investing.
And when you look at the segments in fintech, you mentioned payments. Maybe what are the others that are filling your portfolio, including payments? What other fintech sectors are you invested in?
So we actually we are very, very cautious when it comes to payments, because there has been a lot of it done already. So what we like to see is we like to invest in that layer above, like interoperability plays, infrastructure plays. But then also insurtech for us is a very interesting area where we see that there could be some major growth to be unlocked. I mean, we're looking at one of the lowest insurance penetrations on the world, and then you see what happened in India, like with My Digit and so on, and how insurance could be kickstarted also with technology. We look at it mainly from the angle of distribution first. Then another one is B2B SaaS for fintech. That's a bit broad term, right? For us, we include in that like CFO automation tools, but like on the side, like we have a portfolio company here led by two fantastic women in Kenya called CredRails. What they're building is a reconciliation tool for fintechs, but also for financial institutions or large corporates. I mean, reconciliation is a major issue and takes a lot of manual intervention on the continent, and we have so many different payment modes. So their technology is really making a difference for customers. And another area that we see as B2B SaaS is cybersecurity. We've done an investment there, also led by two fantastic women in South Africa, called Orca Fraud, and they are approaching it they're entering that market from the angle of transaction monitoring. And then there's a whole layer to actually upsell on top of that. So that is on the B2B SaaS side. And also, like, we are quite keen right now on looking at what kind of stablecoin infrastructure could work and could help connect African payments to the world. That is something we are very deeply monitoring right now. We haven't done any investments yet, but we are like mapping it out and basically just like forming our thesis on what could work for Africa, because it's a very regulatory sensitive topic as well. So it has to be very niche, I would say. And another subsegment for us is RegTech. I think that is a massive opportunity, since we're looking at also so much regulatory friction that we have on the continent, and then supporting companies to scale across that would be a big topic in the future. Did I leave out anything? No, I think, yeah, of course, credit and lending, the most important one. I mean, we're looking at a credit-starved continent. So credit lending, that is a really important area for us as well, where we look at also lenders, but also like infrastructure for lenders. So, I mean, we've just recently done an investment here in Uganda, which is import-export finance, that locks customers in by also adding a freight layer, like organizing freight and digitizing the whole process, and then lending on top of that. And then, so that's just like one of our portfolio companies.
No, very good. And it's listening to you, I see, is it more B2B type of investments? Do you do some B2C and even government? How does that fit across your portfolio?
So I would actually avoid governments because of the difficulties that it comes with. First of all, very, very slow sales cycles, then very intransparent processes on how to get government deals. I think that's not a very that's a very tricky area that I don't think we will see our venture style returns on. B2C, yeah, we do that, but we're very cautious about it. So we have a bit more how should I say, preference towards B2B.
Very good. And talking a bit about the technologies, I'd like to go into it a bit further. Mentioned, I see where AI may fit into this, and also want to talk about stablecoin. But maybe we start with AI and how you're seeing that deployed in your portfolio companies, and just more broader across Africa.
Well, to be honest, like right now, I mean, I've looked at some AI, like you see it on all the decks now, right? So, but very few companies actually have an AI component where they really like have some sort of machine learning behind. But ultimately, I mean, it can be interesting on the side of lending, like how to make lending decisions with alternative data. I see a bit of constraint here as we have so much informal activity going on, because like at the end of the day, you're not just like the data you have is one picture, but then on the other side you can have like very informal loans with loan sharks, and they might like just take out a loan from you in order to pay back that. So I think those are the constraints for purely data-driven decision making on the lending side, but it definitely a lot of like opportunity as pattern emerge, and we've seen some successes already from different companies implementing data-driven lending strategies. On the other side, like I haven't seen it too much, to be honest. It's more like adaptation of AI tools, like not really original creations. Basically, it's just using other AI tools within the process. And I do think personally, I mean, I think I'm quite keen actually to see how AI could really increase productivity of the African workforce. I mean, this is still like a very big unknown, but I kind of already see it happening a little bit with the way I receive emails. A lot of it like used to be very how should I say? I used to get a lot of rookie emails or rookie texts where you could clearly see that the person doesn't really speak English, but now the quality of those texts has gone up because people just throw it into ChatGPT and they've come up with a decently professional sounding message.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also this is an interesting play now because it helps a lot of people professionalize in the way they present themselves or in the way they conduct business.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's an interesting one. I wonder if it can be applied to on a mass scale, right? Because you have that educated upper middle class that is already quite professional, but then you have a very large lower income class that has nothing to do with the way we work, and therefore has a harder time to get somewhere, right? Because you don't know how to communicate. But this can actually have some interesting implications here, and I wonder how and what kind of applications will support people, and if it's necessary is also the other question. I mean, this is like still something I'm thinking about, but I do see some good opportunity in AI boosting overall productivity in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems
And
very
the same for,
can be managed. Yeah, and that's looking for as an investment something that really has a measurable, tangible return, taking an existing
yeah.
process and making it better. Are you seeing it? Are the when you see AI, are there solutions being developed within African markets, or is it more of a European or non-African companies coming in looking to sell a solution?
It's kind of both. I mean, we have more coming from like countries like South Africa because the tech scene is very well established, and there's a lot of tech talent. So we see more from South Africa actually.
Hmm.
And then obviously companies try to enter, but they're still like right now AI, the market is like wherever you're, like if you're a company in Brazil, you probably need to first capture Brazil. It's just like in its infancy, and the war is like about like capturing your markets first before you branch out. So I think like, that's why also we don't see that many like foreign AI companies, because if you build a tool and you manage to sell it in Germany, it's much better than trying to enter Africa at this point. um, but what could be also interesting is like on the side of the developers. I mean, we do have a developer scarcity on the continent,
Hmm.
and developers are relatively expensive given to like compared to other emerging markets. So like having developers be extra efficient through prompt engineering and so forth, that could really lower the cost of tech development on the continent as well and support companies in their deployment. I think this is a very good use case of existing tools on in the way they will help shape up technology and um, build technology on the continent.
Hmm. No, I like that. The focus on existing processes, a productivity improvement tool with the lending and credit decision making, you still have another uncertainty around the market acceptance about that. You talked about, depending on your demographic group, who will they go to lend, and has that process been really well defined or commercialized or digitized, I guess to say it. So probably worth watching, but I really like your thoughts about the productivity piece. I think that's something that you can show a payback and a company providing that solution can build credibility. Probably fits into your, the B2B sector as well, which I think can be quicker to implement and learn from as well. Very good. No, thank you. Good insight.
Absolutely, absolutely, of course.
And then maybe jump into the whole, I guess the broadest category may be, blockchain, which enables cryptocurrencies, but been more focused on stablecoin. Here in the U.S., we had an election a couple months past, so we'll have a new president, a new administration, and one that is more crypto friendly, almost a cryptophile. I think that's a word.
Yeah,
But part of it from the I think from the Trump administration standpoint is comes from a position of maintaining the role of the U.S. dollar as the settlement
yeah.
currency, et cetera. So being supportive of a stable coin. But what do you see? What's the perspective you have from the seat you have, and how is that playing out across Africa? Um, I think it could really range depending on, regulation, government appetites, etc.
I think we're still like, I mean, okay, two things here. Like, I think it's a very interesting thing that the Trump administration is going to basically change the whole stance on crypto. I think that's actually a very smooth move for the dollar, looking at like how important the dollar is in terms as a reserve currency, but also then like I mean, all these stablecoin providers, they are also treasury buyers of the like US government. So this is a great way to also fund your own government. And I find that a super interesting movement actually that African governments should maybe think about. Like, if your currency is like is digitized and also has a little bit of an ability to generate money, right? Because basically what we'll do is we'll give the power from only government generating, I mean, obviously private sector is also generating money kind of like through lending and so on, but like on a currency level it used to be only like the central banks, right? But now if you have these stablecoin issuers, by them having only to have like some sort of what's the like a percentage that they have to back with US dollars, they also have the ability to create some extra liquidity on top of that.
Mhm.
And I think this is the interesting piece that is going to be very relevant in Africa as well. I mean, right now we see a lot of the stablecoin usage is like, okay, people want to hold USD. They're just trying to access dollars in Nigeria and so on, and often it's easier through stable coins than obviously through banks because they are limiting the amount of dollars they give out.
Mhm.
So we see it like as people holding like stable coins as just a reserve for their savings, but also to move money around and so on. It's kind of similar to what you see also in LATAM. But now the question is also on how can it further lower transfer costs? Like already for many remittance companies that I've looked at, they are settling initially not with US dollar, like in the back end, if they
Mhm.
take your transaction and you send it somewhere, they're like converting it to stable coins and then like pay like converting it again to hard currency. So these on and off ramps
Right.
of moving money around. So that's a very important use case. And I mean, those use cases and helping markets access currency more freely
Mhm.
will be helpful on one hand because it should lower the cost of transactions. If you look at like how much it costs to kind of like change into a stable coin versus
Mhm.
change convert the currency in with a bank, it should lower overall, it should lower transaction costs and ease doing business. But then we still have a lot of like issues, like because movement of money alone is not going to resolve like the fact that we have declining manufacturing growth across sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, we've seen over the last 5 years our manufacturing is not increasing, it's the opposite, it's decreasing despite the growth in population. There's more imports from China and so on. And it's irrelevant for an African government whether the US dollars or the renminbi is the global reserve currency, right?
Mhm.
If you cannot manage to increase your exports,
Right.
because at the end of the day, that is still a relevant part. Um, I mean, we have natural resource exports, but that's the growth rates are like one digit growth.
Right.
Like it's not like it's not a tiger growth like that you've seen in India. I mean, India had, I think I looked at that graph once, they had like persistent growth of like 20% annually of exports over like at least 10 years. That's like that's crazy. That I mean that doubles the number every 5 years. So I think this is some interesting, these are also structural problems that we still, like, African governments still have to address in the way they kind of like regulate around businesses, because okay, even if money moves easier, access to foreign currency is not your only issue if you don't have the export push, if you don't have those things.
Agreed. And it's yeah, it triggered a thought, just the need in Africa to go beyond commodity-driven economies where you're whipsawed, you're
Yeah,
at the tail, you have the, biggest, changes, and suffer when you have disruptions like, could be, war in Ukraine, for example, and the need across Africa to develop more value-added services where you're capturing more of that value. And I like the way you position this. I mean, the stable coins, or call it crypto blockchain, are, remove one of the barriers, but it's one of a few gates that have to go through. Um,
exactly.
and looking to see, and this becomes part of a government policy. There's got to be, in thinking about, we'll talk about the stable coin. Which countries do you think are, or which economies do you think are most likely to take advantage of this, that can navigate through the, the regulatory and government hurdles that are there?
That's a very good question, and I honestly, whatever prediction I'm making now, this is throwing darts, because African governments can change their minds very quickly, as we have seen in the past. But I think that it will be definitely interesting in South Africa, in Kenya, probably Nigeria as well. But it's still like that one is still on the big fence. I would say the way they continue. I mean, they just had the Binance executive in jail for like 9 or 10 months.
Right.
So I think, but like things in Nigeria can turn very quickly. So, but that's also how I would like look at it. It's a very volatile play right now in a lot of the markets. So if you create software around it and not become a stable currency operator, it's probably going to be more acceptable for governments to have financial institutions implement your tools, right?
Sure, sure. No, I like that. It goes back to, I'll date myself a bit here, but I had my first tour with Visa. I joined when the internet was first being discovered, and I wound up, figuring out whether it's friend or foe, and going up to Redmond, Washington. Visa had a partnership with Microsoft, and it was around a security technology. I made one mistake. I wound up bringing my Mac up to Microsoft and trying to find a way to project my presentation. Uh, but all the techies there loved me, helping me out. But what it got back to the, I think the point I was looking to make here is that uh, the other analogy was kind of a gold rush. They had the California gold rush, and sometimes you made more money selling the equipment, selling the pickaxes and the tents and supplies, than being the prospector. And perhaps as an investor here, looking at those tools and technologies that can help, deliver or manage that stable coin, until things become a bit more clear
Yeah,
on how the regulatory piece will play out, and not just and I think not just in Africa, but in Washington, and we'll have the new Trump administration in about 2 weeks. But certainly to be watched. I've followed, really followed more of blockchain, and I come from a payment perspective, and really didn't get crypto. It's not a transaction tool. It's not something that's going to replace it as a payment. I see it as a store of value, speculative. But my attention's been redirected now with stablecoin. There's something there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but at least at a minimum, need to be tracking that and watching that. And I'll be watching what you think about this as well. I think your insights are very good on. You're asking the
thank
right
you.
questions. Thank you.
I'm just like, and I'm trying to formulate it now in a short paper as well. But I completely agree with you on your viewpoint. Like for me, for the longest time, I was the biggest crypto skeptic, right? I think up until now, like Bitcoin is like this is completely it's just a speculation.
Right.
It's pure speculative. But then with stable coins, it actually that's the first time I thought, okay, blockchain, this could be an interesting application of an electronic money transfer tool. And if it brings in more efficiency and lowers the cost of transfers, this can be an interesting angle.
Right.
And that's how I look at it now.
Agreed. No, I'm looking forward to seeing, learning more about that paper as you craft that and eventually publish it. We'll
Of
make
course.
sure we'll get a look at that. Um, Another area I want to look at is, looking at the investments you talk about. You hear about Kenya, South Africa, you're in Uganda. Are you seeing many companies that are successful becoming regional or cross-continent? Uh, has that happened to
Yeah.
a degree yet?
I mean, our portfolio is very young. So we have seen some like cross-continental expansion, like Cred Rails, for example. They're also operating in Nigeria, looking at South Africa, and so on. So we've seen a little bit of that, but looking ahead at the companies that are further
Mhm.
out, like there's like Series D company called Time Bank that
Mm.
Nubank just invested in. They started in South Africa, but then they expanded to the Philippines and Indonesia. I'm not sure about Indonesia, but I'm sure about Philippines. So, but they expanded to the global south, and we've seen that also with Move. They
Mhm.
expanded initially global south, but then they also went to the US now, and they're in UK. So they're going outside. They're exporting tech outside of Africa. I mean, and also like Selma's angel investment, Expensia, that started in Tunisia, and they entered France, and then got bought out by a private equity firm. So we see African tech also expand internationally, but then also we see, I mean, the biggest local African tech innovation is mobile money, right? So we see that across the continent. But this is the interesting piece now for the future. Like, what are the local applications that will scale only across Africa? But I doubt that they will stay only on Africa. I mean, telecom is a very asset intense business. So getting it to other continents is a bit more tricky than technology. So I think that the future African startups that's starting in Africa, they will go international. They
Mhm.
will also expand, and this is a trajectory that they will follow, that India has completed, and so on, and those will be the unicorns.
Right.
And the other one, like, I think if you as a pure technology company, if you only stay in Africa, there are very very few applications that will reach a unicorn status.
Mhm.
So the exits will be between 100, 2, 3, 400, whatever.
Mhm.
But to really become a unicorn, most of them will have to expand internationally.
Mhm.
I don't like, there is a potential to have a pure African unicorn, but I do think that um, a lot of it will also come from like building that ability to bring African tech to the world.
Very interesting. In some areas, really, it's the whole mobile wallet and the telephone-based financial transactions expertise that really born came out of Africa, out of East Africa.
Yes,
Well, where our
exactly.
civilization started a millennia ago, out of East Africa. Will be interesting to see. I mean, a couple of unicorns. I guess they still, I was going to say Flutter, they Flutter Wave, and interesting U.S. tie. Companies have funding headquarters here. See where they stand and make sure there's a really good foundation around that.
Yeah.
But a need to go beyond borders, certainly within Africa, and then finding a technology that can take you beyond that. Uh, uh, we shall see. How about not looking so far ahead? What's 2025 look for you? Read your newsletter. Thanks for sending that, the note that came. Hopefully, I want to make for myself, maybe not just wishful thinking, but continuing a recovery from the boom days of the 21, 22, and then sharp decline. What's 2025 look like to you?
So Yeah, thank you also for reading our newsletter and taking the time for that. 2025 for us will still be a bit of fundraising on the fund side, but then steady deployment, helping our portfolio companies get to the next rounds. We have some very promising traction among our portfolio, so we are very excited to help them raise their next rounds. And yeah, uh, pretty much that, and learn more about the market and just continue pushing.
And if you look at your portfolio and the companies that you're investigating, what are the key needs you see that gaps that need to be filled, and is that a gap that can be filled domestically, or is it external? Is it tech? Is it funding, human resource? What's that need?
I think it depends really on the type of company, but definitely, I mean, human resources is an issue when it comes to finding people who have experience in scaling technology. Those are very scarce talents, as we yeah. Uh, so that kind of competence, but then we're trying to always connect our companies to advisors who've built who've had a similar position or built something similar in another emerging market, and they've become
Mhm.
very successful, to get some insights from there. When it comes to lending, it's really about also like access to a loan portfolio and so on. And these can be very slow processes. So you need founders that have a lot of patience in that, but also that have that get the support on okay where to and how to raise debt and so on. And we're trying to be as helpful as we can with that.
I can get that. I see in mentioning in lending, a lot of times you want a lot of iterations to build experience going up a learning curve, and sometimes you can buy that or access that. I like the thought about the advisors coming in; they can give you information to that. Sometimes there's barriers. It may be just management not familiar that there are these resources, or sometimes there's a bit of hubris that no, we can do it, breaking through that. But there's always, to me, that it comes to the understanding that you can have this great plan, but once you enter a market, it changes. It was I
Yeah,
forget, not to get too military, but I think it was, the fog of war happens, or the fog of business, of commerce. And how do you adjust? And having advisors like yourself be able to, give them a perspective and make the adjustments. It's important to have a plan, but because it gets you to lay out your thinking and understand the cause and effect. But be able to make the adjustment and have a perspective that balances the need to focus without having blinders on. Um,
exactly.
but we'll see.
Exactly.
Well, this is great.
Exactly.
Anything else you'd like to add before we close out today? I'm really enjoying this discussion. It's a great way to start the year.
Fantastic. I'm happy to. And thank you for having me on this podcast.
Well, very good, Agnes. Thank you. I look forward to our paths crossing again. I'll let you know when I'm out your
Thank
way,
you.
and we'll share a nice dinner together. That would be great.
Sounds great. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Be well. Take care.